Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of Dear Nicole Dilemmas. Today I'm going to be answering everything relationships and breakup, one of my biggest topics. If I haven't answered your dilemma yet, please know that I am getting through all of them. I'll be answering them on my personal account, Rewire with Nicole, where I'll be plugging a lot more content that is lifestyle and advice related. I'll also be answering some of them on Substack, predominantly through a paywall that is to protect you guys and to be able to answer some of the juiciest dilemmas without having to worry about the public eye, basically. Without further ado, let's get into it today. Dear Nicole, I've done the cliche thing and fallen in love with a guy friend who's in a long-term relationship but unhappy, which annoyingly gives me hope. We talk every day, spend a lot of time together, laugh until we cry, and support each other through everything. I rarely connect with people like this, so it feels like more than just friends. He's never hinted at feelings, so is this just a normal friendship at a depth that I haven't experienced? I think about asking him, but I'm scared we'll change the dynamic. Even if his relationship ends, he'll need time and space. Still, my brain keeps creating scenarios where it could work, and it's driving me crazy. So, 1, should I ask and risk awkwardness? Number 2, work out how to keep him in my life without these feelings? Or number 3, start pulling away if I can't stop? Okay, I'm giggling because it's familiar, right? It's a familiarity of the person. Now you could very well have feelings because at the end of the day, love is built on friendship, right? And we should be friends with the person that we love. And I believe that we should be friends with them first to some degree, right? We have to cultivate a friendship within love. And so that is why it is very natural for you to have feelings for this person. Now, just a couple of questions to get you thinking. I'm not necessarily saying that this is what's happening, but just to get you thinking, could it be that there's also something about him being unavailable that's attracting you to the situation? Just a question. Now, here's the other thing that I'm going to say, and I can resonate with this because I've personally gone through this and I know this with a lot of my clients. Sometimes we can feel a particular way about somebody, but also know that there's no future. I've had situations where I fancied a friend, but also inherently knew that if we crossed the lines or the boundaries of what that friendship was, that it would ruin what we had as friends, because I personally knew that there was no future. And I think that there's nuance to the statement and there's nuance to liking people, because sometimes we can like people and just fancy them at a surface level without wanting anything more. And I think that that is the epitome of emotional intelligence, is being able to discern who you could build a life with and who you can just fancy and keep at an arm's length. And I don't mean an arm's length as in don't speak to them. So to answer your questions, should I ask him and risk awkwardness? Now here's the thing, talking about things generally always helps. And if he's a really good friend, he'll be able to validate or help you through it. So it's about how you frame it. You can't go and declare your undying love for him while he's in a relationship, but you can say, look, I've been having these thoughts and feelings. Do you feel the same? It could just be that we have these feelings because we're such good friends, and just go from there. I think that honesty is the best policy, right? Always is. And here's the thing, when I was personally in this situation, I actually openly had that awkward conversation with this friend. And I said, look, I think it's really evident that there's something here, but I think it's also really evident that if we go there, we will probably ruin something good. And if we then find new partners, we wouldn't be able to be friends anymore. And so that's answering question number 1. I think that you probably should speak to him, because if he's such a good friend to you and you guys laugh until you cry and you talk all the time, then you should be able to have these conversations too. Number 2 is work out how to keep him in your life without these feelings, or stop pulling away. The thing is, you can keep him in your life with the feelings, depending on how severe they are, depending on how much you want to act on them. You'll only really know that until you've actually spoken to him. And I want to end it by saying that you can't try and make him break up his relationship. It's going to be really tough, but that decision needs to come from him. Otherwise, you'll always be the person that made him do that, and that's going to create a dynamic in your relationship. But be a friend to him. That's exactly what you are. You're a really good friend, so keep being a friend and openly discuss your feelings. I think that's absolutely fine. We should all be able to have these conversations. Brene Brown said this incredible thing that I love this quote so much, and she said, when we can tell our story to somebody who responds with empathy, shame cannot exist. And sometimes we hyper-exacerbate what's going on and what we're thinking and what we're feeling because we don't have the answers. And so we're trying to close that gap, and it exacerbates how we're actually feeling. When we say it out loud and we bring it out into the light, we get this kind of like, I hope that helps. Dear Nicole, I've always been grossed up by the idea of an age gap where the guy is younger, even just days or months. It's not a preference, it feels like a rigid rule in my head. The problem is, if I like somebody and I find out they're okay with dating older women, my attraction to them fades. No one else seems to feel this strongly, but I can't shake it. On top of that, I struggle with the idea that people in relationships can still find others attractive. For me, that feels like micro-cheating, and I get hurt and betrayed when it happens. And I don't think I'll ever feel secure enough to accept this, and it makes me worry I'm not cut out for long-term relationships. Okay, interesting. I guess I'm curious to know where along the line did you become so rigid about what you wanted? And here's the other thing, when we become rigid about what we want, and I think that there's two sides to this coin, right? The problem that you're describing to me sounds less about the age gap or the attraction itself, but more about the psychological rules that you have created for yourself. In psychology, we call them rigid schemas. These are deeply ingrained beliefs that are usually linked to survival. So I'm wondering if somewhere along the line you learned the set of rules about what the world should be like because you were in a state of survival. Because these rules often develop when it comes to our development, when it comes to safety, when it comes to our understanding of relationship dynamics. And so it's not about the attraction or the age gap, it's that it's triggering a kind of survival mechanism in you for you to not be able to see past it. So there's a couple of things to this. You can find somebody who doesn't find older women attractive. The underlying issue here is not about that. It's about the rigidity of your thinking. And I'd like you to explore where those come from. What safety mechanisms have you developed to keep you safe in these scenarios when it comes to love? And then that brings me to my next point, is that there's a security issue in here. You said, I don't think I'll ever feel secure enough to accept this, where your partner might find somebody else attractive. Now here's the thing, back to the previous point I made from the previous dilemma, we can find people attractive, and I think that that's okay. And it's actually fairly normal for us to do that, and for us to deny ourselves something, that's where the problem then starts to become worse. So it's this kind of like resistance towards not being able to look at people or think about people or openly speak that creates a kind of stress. It creates a resistance towards a thing, and it makes you want it more. And you know that because as humans, we're wired like that. We want the thing we can't have. So if you say to your partner, you can't find other people attractive, it's going to create a seed in that relationship where this person is going to be actively trying to not do that, and then inadvertently probably doing it more than if it was just out in the open. It's a bit like children. When you tell them they can't swear, they want to swear even more. But if you don't make a fuss about the swear word, they actually just forget about it, right? So I think you need to figure out how you can become more secure in yourself, because that rigid type thinking is going to then show up in other areas of your life, not just relationships. And the thing is, we want to be able to be malleable in life. Now, a couple of tools that you can use is that you can actively teach your central nervous system to be safe in a stressful environment. We do that through controlled exposure, whether that be actually putting yourself in a situation where you're dating somebody like that, or you can mimic it in a different setting like exercise or social settings. If you struggle with social anxiety, for example, you can slowly put yourself out there and teach your central nervous system that you're safe. It's the same mechanism here. So you want to essentially build resilience in your life towards stress, that when these things come into your life, you're not fazed by them. Because this problem is linked to your stress, and it's linked to a survival mechanism, a belief that you have deeply rooted and created in your life to keep you safe, but it is no longer serving you, because people can have histories. People can have different views on life. And yes, you can choose somebody who doesn't have an attraction to older women. I don't think that that's that difficult, but I don't think that you're going to solve the problem, if that makes sense. Hope that helps. Dear Nicole, I recently went through a breakup after 3 years in an open relationship. Long story short, I felt more like a sex toy, and my confidence relied on being attractive through sex. 5 months later, I've moved on with someone I met during that time. There wasn't any cheating. My partner knew everything about it. Now that I'm out of it, I see how unnatural the relationship was. He controlled who I slept with and when, and I felt only valued for the sex. I want to move on without guilt, but I feel overwhelmed and don't know how to move forward internally. What you're describing makes a lot of sense when you think about how relationships are a co-creation that then feed our self-worth. Right? And what I mean by that is that people are a mirror, and our self-worth is mirrored through the relationships that we're in. So if your partner controlled you through these mechanisms that you just explained, your brain learned to equate desirability with love. It created a system where these two things are now tied together. That is essentially the basis of associative neuroplasticity. Two things that are triggered together at the same time then become associated, so that one cannot operate without the other. And that is why you feel the guilt and the confusion, because the relationship essentially tied intimacy with control and your worth with performance. In psychology, we call that conditional self-esteem, that you can be good You can be a good girl, you can be desirable, you can be loved if you do all these things. The good news is that in this confusion is you stepping out of that, you're evolving, because you just said that you see now how unnatural the relationship was. And so what is happening here is this kind of like a recalibration process where the brain has to readjust to this new set of values. It's essentially having to disconnect those associations that you have made in your brain when it came to your previous relationship. So you're essentially, I like to call it rescaffolding. You are rescaffolding your beliefs, your values, who you are, and how you see relationships. It's an unstable part in your life right now, but the great thing about this instability is that you get to choose where you want the pieces to go. And that's the beauty of rescaffolding, is that even though it feels like you're kind of like dropping, you know, that feeling where you're kind of like, oh, I don't know where to hold on to, because everything feels like it's just shaky and there's no rigid structure to hold on to. But you get to choose where the pieces go. You can rebuild yourself, and you can now see that this was not for you, right? And here's the other part. You now know, you have experience. You didn't know at the time, and you can't berate yourself for that. You can't be hard on yourself for not knowing something. Now you know. So now you have the understanding, you can see the red flags from the beginning because you've seen them before. So you have this awareness. We call them memory templates. Your brain now has an understanding of what this pattern looks like. And you can then choose in the future to say no. It's only until you've gone something of this grandiosity that you start to gain the understanding and the knowledge of what you want and what you don't want for yourself. So in a way, it's a good thing. It's a good thing because now you can rebuild your self-worth, you can rebuild your identity, and you can stand true in what it is that you want because you know what you don't want. By process of elimination, unfortunately, you had to go through it, but we all have gone through our own versions of what we don't want in relationships, and this is great. This is great because you now have a choice. I hope this helps. Dear Nicole, I've been in a relationship for 2.5 years and I still doubt it's for me. I don't feel attracted to my girlfriend like I used to be. I have this feeling to explore more before settling down. I'm going to give you the signs of what happens. Now, in the beginning of a relationship, it is extremely exciting. 18 months, 2 years, everything is like, whoa, this is crazy. Dopamine is high. You don't know this person. Your brain is trying to fill in the gaps. Like, I want to know everything about them. Okay. Once we know everything about them, we understand the model, dopamine drops off because dopamine is responsible for seeking information. So if we don't know something about somebody, it keeps us engaged. It's part of the reason as to why people often chase unavailable people, right? Because it's that chase. It's not really about the person. Now, in this scenario, it could be a couple of things. It could be that actually dopamine has just come back to baseline. And now it's more of a long-term committing relationship that we call it a more serotonergic relationship where there's more feelings of love and commitment. And it could be that your brain has now mistaken it for something boring, or you actually have taken the blinders off. The dopamine has worn off and now you realize that this relationship is not for you. So it could be that you're either mistaken it for boring because it's come to something lovely and maybe it's scaring you that there's longevity in it, or it's that the dopamines wore off and now it is actually boring and it's not something that was for you. I can't give you that answer. I can give you the science and explain to you what's happening, and then you can discern whether it feels more like point A, the dopamine has subsided and now it's just a long-term relationship full of love and commitment, something that you have to keep building on. Relationships can be work, or you don't feel attracted to them because the dopamine has subsided. I don't know how old you are. Maybe you do need to do more before settling down, but you can also do this with this person. Maybe even just speaking to them will help you see that maybe they feel the same way. Maybe they also want a little bit more in this relationship. Maybe they want to go on adventures with you. Maybe they want to also go and explore the world and life before settling down too, but still with you. That doesn't really give you an answer, but I hope that it's kind of steering you in the right direction to be able to figure out why it is that you're feeling like that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I have closed the submissions for the dilemmas purely because I have so many to get through and I want to be able to answer you all. So thank you for your patience. I hope that you enjoyed. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I hope that I answered your questions.